Welcome, everyone. I am Nichole DeMent, the Executive Director of SOLA, and SOLA stands for Support of Old Lady Artists. Tonight, I am here representing the leadership team, which is Jenny Ruffner, an artist that we all know and love, and also the founder of SOLA. And Marge Levy is one of the leadership team that I am honored to work with as well. They won't be joining us tonight. It's just me and you. So we get to have a lot of fun while the bosses are away. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about archiving. How do we build our careers and how do we have an ongoing, long-standing career through archiving? And before we start, I want you to think about the people that you know of that are super organized and that probably have this complete. Like they already know, they have it all done. I mean, maybe you know someone, maybe not. I'm curious, but here, do you have your archives started? Just a show of hands. Who started? Carol and Joan, Tamea. Tamea, am I saying your name right? Okay, thank you. Liz, you've done some, yeah. And so anyone close to completed their archive?
Really?
Amazing. Congrats.
I'm a geek who likes databases. Come on.
And
Sometimes
yes,
more than doing the art, just saying.
yeah, well, you know, we all have our fortes and you are absolutely talented in that for sure. And to me, it's we are recording, so this will be followed up with the recording. Thank you for letting me know. Who has an exhibition history, like the list of the exhibitions? Just a show of hands. You have your list. Yeah, okay, so you're started. This is it. This is part of the what's needed to start an archive. So you're already halfway there. You have the art, you have an exhibition history list that's probably pretty comprehensive. Even further, who has a CV? So a curriculum vitae, kind of an artist resume, people, yeah, right? So you are already more than halfway there then. We're just, the bar is inching closer and closer to you being sort of done. But this is a great place to start. So thank you for that information. Again, if you want to ask questions during this, then go ahead and put things in the chat. I'm going to speed through a lot of information. This is being recorded. You'll be able to follow up. And I also want to add some items that are links that will be helpful. So I've added 2 links. We have worked at SOLA, we have created the famous Female Artists Planning for Success workbook. And it highlights, in fact, this is Joan's page right here. It highlights the SOLA awardees through 2022, from the very beginning through 2022, and it adds information that helps people get through the process that we're talking about. I'm going to be highlighting some of those pages in this conversation. And there's a link to the Joan Mitchell Foundation. I've not looked at this yet. There's the Joan Mitchell Foundation Career Creating a Living Legacy Career Documentation Workbook. And I'll be highlighting a few pages on there. Both of those workbooks are free downloads on those individual website links. So I highly encourage you to think of them as your legacy partners in this journey, because this is not something you want to do alone. I mean, part of legacy is sharing it with someone else. So definitely download those books and make sure that you have those ready and at the helm when you get started and as you move forward on this. I'm going to do some other files later because I want to get started. I first want to say that SOLA acknowledges that we are on the unceded traditional land of the Coast Salish peoples, and we recognize they are the first peoples of the land, past and present, and we honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish, Suquamish, Stillaquamish, and Muckleshoot peoples. The how, why, when, and what do I keep? How do I sort it? How do I organize it? And maybe how do I give it numbers for all of the things that are most important for your archive building? So this is a couple of the first beginning pages for the Planning for Success, famous female artists. Of course, as I mentioned, we highlight the award winners that have received the SOLA Award since 2017 with not only their images, but also with their inspirations and advice and the things that keep them going after this continual production that they've been doing. And the key things that we think are helping us all plan for success. Obviously, you have to start with passion. There must be persistence, discipline, and strategy, which is a lot about what this archiving is about. We all need a sense of adventure no matter what we're doing, but especially in the arts, there has to be that creative edge and then the organization. So these are some of the beginnings of what we think is needed. And as I mentioned, the Joan Mitchell Foundation, and this is if someone comes later and doesn't receive the links that I put in the chat, this is the information to go to the Joan Mitchell Foundation.org/guides to receive the download of the career documentation for artists workbook. And just to go back a little bit, I was trained by the Joan Mitchell Foundation to work with this workbook as well as individuals as they made their way through it. And I also worked through Artist Trust about 10 years ago to train others as legacy specialists to do this work as well. So we'll start a little bit with nomenclature. What's the difference between a collection and an archive? They're often used synonymously or back and forth. And, you know, we've got stamp collections, we've got record collections, and we have art collections. But a collection is, you know, a grouping of things that are assembled from various sources, and they may or may not be organized. So your bug collection is probably not organized by year or something like that. So, and then an archive takes those collections, and it's not only the art collection, but it's the ephemera, be it physical and digital, of that collection. Typically, an archive is historic. It speaks to the history of a thing, or you as an artist. And then it also is fairly static. And thinking about your archive as an artist, it's going to move and shift a little bit because things potentially will go to shows, or, you know, art will be loaned out, possibly sold, hopefully, right? So that's a great way to break it down. But the art career documentation is what we are talking about today. And we're talking about what is the work that you do? What is the work that you have done in the world? Who are the people, not only that maybe you created and collaborated with, but who is the audience that you have created for? These are some of the bigger focuses of what an art career documentation looks at. Additionally, what are the challenges and the accomplishments that you have had in the work that you do? And how did you get to where you are? Also, some people have, you call it themes or it's bodies of work, but what's been the focus? Has it been an intellectual endeavor, an educational pursuit? Or has your focus also been family and friends, or activism, maybe spirituality? Career is what we're the label on the title on the top of this slide is art career documentation, but we are pulling out to understand you in your art career. And this is important to recognize for an archive. Some of us are filers, and some of us are pilers. Everybody has a system, and if anybody moves my pile, I won't know where anything is. But if it stays in the pile that I put it in, I know exactly where it's at. So just to recognize, there's many different ways for personal filing systems. I'm going to share some information about what systems there are, but there's many different ways to do it. And there's obviously paper, there's art, and then there are external hardware and technology, be it your phone. Your phone can be part of your archive because there's a little database inside of that thing. And who knows what you're storing on there? Hopefully it's organized. I'm sure it is, right? And then there's always the computer files. Computer files, it's essential to have them. I mean, we don't get to submit slides anymore, do we? Maybe that's a good thing, right? Joan, you were talking about slides, I think, a couple other times. We all understand at the ages that we are that slides are a real thing, and we have moved on from them. So now it's computer files. So these are different ways and methods of filing your work. So looking at an archive inventory, there are foundational elements, and this is a little bit redundant. Obviously, there's the artwork, and artwork can include anything that is created with artistic intent. And there's always the documentation. It says photographic documentation of anything created with artistic intent, but it also could be video documentation or sketches. And then there are the contacts. So who has been associated with your work? Is it artists, curators? What are the galleries and museums, the dealers, the collectors? And if you've had any staff, these are all important to the archive database, be it paper or digital. When I say database, I'm speaking more collectively of your inventory information. And then we look at the bibliography, and that's just, it sounds really important, but it's also just the writings of your work, be it someone who's written about you, if it's a review, or some influencer on YouTube has done a video about you or your work, or blog posts have been written, or maybe you also have written those things. Then that is definitely something to include in your archive. And of course, there are the exhibitions. That is something that detailed exhibition history that I asked you about earlier. Is that a part of your archive? Most definitely, yes. So the first thing I want you to do is to sit down and think about a controlled vocabulary. Do you do paintings? Do you want to call them all paintings? Do you do lithographs? Do you want to separate them out? And it's really helpful to have, and I'll talk about this more in a second, I think. So painting could be 2 letters that are PG, where a photograph could be PH, a print could be PR. So this is absolutely one of the first things that will help you as you're coming up with naming conventions and as you go through your records and your art to help you sort things. And you want to use that. If you're calling it a painting, then it's a painting, and you can further delineate what that is in different ways that you're filing and your system of breaking things down. But this is really important. It's really helpful to have this early on, to use controlled vocabulary. So we'll dive in just a little bit more. Artworks. We talked about the artworks, and I think because most of you have art that has been shown, you probably already have the key identifiers, such as the title of the piece. What media is it? What are the dimensions? What is the date that it was created? Do you keep the collectors with each of your artworks as they are sold? And do you keep the price of your artworks? That's actually really important to someone looking back at your archive. Not only, okay, we all know there is the price, and then there's also sometimes the retail price, which is different, right? Sometimes, every once in a while, it's not supposed to be, but every once in a while, the collector or somebody gets a pretty good deal, or maybe it's a barter or a trade. That information should stay with the record that is your artwork. It's equally as important as the title and the media. And I just want to talk really quickly about the title. A lot of well-meaning curators in the future, when they're showing your work, will think that it's all lowercase in your title because, well, you just typed it in wrong. It's really important to be intentional about how you spell your titles, how, if you do it all lowercase or all caps, that's be extra intentional, just like choosing your consistent vocabulary. Be intentional about how you create and delineate the titles and all of the information for your artwork. So the purchase and sales records are something that can be part of an artist's archive. They normally are. This supports this idea of, how much did you pay, and both not just what the price was, but who has it, who is the collector, or what museum is it located in. Additionally, you want to think about if there are commissions that you do and public art that you have done. Who are the organizations? Where in the world is your art? So those can be absolutely parts of the purchase and sales records, and it doesn't have to be completed. Maybe you submitted something for a public art opportunity and it didn't go anywhere yet, but that is important to have in your archive. Awards and successes. Well, that one's kind of easy. We definitely want to keep that stuff. But what are the significant exhibits and honors? And I would include all, not just in the art world, but can we, if you're a physics professor and you're making abstract paintings, I think looking back at you as who you were in your archive and your legacy, I think it's beautiful to understand that a physics professor and an abstract artist are the same person. So if you've received honors, awards, residencies that support who you are as an individual artist, I often see people excluding those things. Oh, well, that's my separate work career. But as people are looking back at you in the world, they're going to want to know. And you know what? You get to choose. So this is another important part of an archive, is what you include and what you don't, including artworks. You don't have to put every artwork that you've ever created in your archive, but you should deascension it, which is destroy it, if you don't want it in your archive, so that people understand once you're gone what to do with it. So marketing and media. We all have lots of postcards left from the shows that we've been in. At least I do. I don't know. I'm bad about getting them out, I guess. What other kinds of posters and prints, what are any digital media? Again, the blog posts that you've written about the work, website, and social media screen grabs. So social media, potentially you have some kind of JPEG or file that you've uploaded, it's like an ad, but your website is something that changes every once in a while. So maybe before you go and do an update to your website, you really do a whole screen grab or a screenshot of that website. And get all of it, and you put that in its own folder. So that's important to have as well. And from my experience, from a recent awful experience that I had, where my website just disappeared and I have to recreate all of the text on it, I can tell you that it's really helpful to have that information when somehow, somewhere, it just disappears into the ether. Photographs and sketches. We already talked a little bit about photographs. The more you can get high res images of your work, and high res is something that 300 DPI, that maybe you can reproduce it in a 11 by 14. That would be a definitely high res, and TIFF files are really helpful to have as really high res images of your work. So make sure that you do document your work and that you have everything that makes up that artistic intent that you have in the world. And then we talked about the comprehensive list of exhibitions throughout a career. So I think that's pretty clear, but in that exhibition history, it's important to include, obviously, the venue that you have it in, the location, the city, if it is a museum, if it's a gallery, the title of the show, any graphics that are included in that, and links to ongoing places on the internet that show is highlighting. Those are really important to include. So we are talking about you as a person, and your archive, as it says, is just the historical evidence that tells your story. And this is important for you to tell your story, not only because you're collecting a bunch of information, and whether it's organized or archived or not, those that are, the artwork is not going to, unlike websites, the artwork's not going to go poof when you pass. It's still going to be there, and your career and your legacy can also still be moved forward. So the people that are empowered to take your legacy forward are going to need to understand, for instance, what I said before. What do you want to keep? What do you want definitely to get rid of? Maybe you want to donate something, a whole body of work, to an alma mater, or to your local historical society. So these are all important places and understandings of how you tell your story, and that can be in the reviews, the articles, the blog posts, additionally your own writings, the journals and diaries. Now, you get to choose. If you organize this right, you will get to choose what's included or not. It's not that everybody wants their personal history so intimately tied with their work. Maybe you do. I think the trend that we see with most art is that artists are sharing more of who they are, and possibly even creating and doing work based on their activism, their environmental beliefs and spiritual beliefs. We see that more and more, but there's nothing that says that you do have to include things like journals and diaries. But it can be extremely fascinating for future artists and historians and people that want to know more about you to go through that information. And if you don't, then have a little full moon celebration where you burn it. Release it all. Correspondence between family, friends, mentors, students that you've worked with, and of course the professional peers. I think we all have seen those writings between artists of note in history that we thought, oh, we learned more about, well, Van Gogh and his brother, right? So if we didn't have that correspondence, we wouldn't know as much about all of the details of Van Gogh. This includes collection of others' artworks. So if you have bought, bartered, traded, if you have other artworks of other artists, then if there's correspondence that goes with that, really good to have that information. And of course, to document, just like your own exhibition history, what was the show, what town, city, what museum, where did you find that information? What was the relationship? And then there's the things and objects that inspire you. Is it, is your personal history based in a culture? Are there things that are part of that culture that are important recognitions that you see in your artwork? And then again, grants and funding, both supported and unsupported. If you have proposed and either accepted or it didn't get accepted, when you spend time on that, that absolutely can be part of your archive. In the Joan Mitchell Foundation career documentation for the Visual Artist Guide, they further elaborate, and a lot of my points there were from their book, but they even say your to-do list and your phone message books. Think about what they're doing. They are keeping the career alive of Joan Mitchell. So of course, those things are absolutely important, and we want to know what were her to-do lists and notes. So absolutely. And this, I believe this is page 65. This is one of the worksheets from Famous Female Artists Planning for Success. And this is what we designed to help you understand to begin. And this will be one of the downloads. And again, it's within that comprehensive download of that in the link that I gave you. And will be posted on our YouTube channel in the description also. And these are the same, except this gives you some examples. So for instance, we have a box, container, or item. This column, we've got an artwork, there's a poster, and there's a banker's box. And it's located, these two are in the basement. And then this one is in the 7th Street storage number B. So making sure that you highlight where it is, and then how's it doing? Okay, the banker's box, it's not in good condition. There's water damage. You really should have kept it off the floor. Anytime you put art or ephemera directly on the floor, it's bad news because you never know what's going to happen. So pull things off the floor with at least 3 or 4 inches. If you have a storage, especially if it's on a lower level floor, put those wooden pallets down, or maybe you just want to have a couple bricks that you then put some wood 2x4s or something, and then you can stack your stuff on there. So it's really good to get things off the floor, and as much as possible, make sure there's not going to be water damage. I didn't intend to talk about that, but it's absolutely important to talk about. And then what is in the banker's box? So several drafts of contracts, photos from 2010 Gallery Z show. And then there is an inventory ID. There is a lot of information, especially in the career documentation guide and workbook for inventorying and ID numbers. We're going to go over it a little bit, but you get to choose, but you're going to have to be consistent. So make some choices early on, and that will support you in this endeavor. If you've already started with something, we all have nomenclatures that we use to, and often those come from exhibitions that or calls for art. They want you to put your first initial, last name, underscore, title, underscore, 10, whatever. So there's already a nomenclature that you probably started with. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but be consistent, and you can use those to get you started. Use what works for you now. If you've already started something, or if your gallery or some other institution that you've had ongoing relationships with has started an inventory numbering ID system for you, then that's great. Just use whatever works, but use the same approach. Think about that controlled vocabulary, and you can have more than one inventory within an archive. Say you have an inventory of your a peer's artworks that you've bartered, you love their work so much, they love your work so much, you have an entire inventory of their artwork. That can be a separate allocation of inventory numbers and information that is in a bigger archive. That doesn't have to be within your inventory of your artwork. That can be separate, or you can delineate it within the way that you set it up to be part of your inventory numbering system. For instance, say we created something in 2010, and I would do 2010 underscore the title, and remember that it should be exactly as you want it reproduced. And if you're consistent in that way, then people won't change. Those well-meaning curators won't change the way that you have written it out. Underscore PG for painting. And then the unique ID, I want you to go to the call documentation and read about this unique ID. They have a lot of information that I just don't have time to get into here today. You should begin with numbering it at 1000, because if it's 0001, often if you're typing that in, it can be problematic with computers. They sometimes, or Excel files, they don't always start with the 000s before. So starting at 1000 is a good idea. But sometimes if you have a database that you're using, it will automatically assign a unique ID already. And then the dimensions, I want you to forever use height by width by depth. Don't kill me when I'm curating a show and start with your width and I see it in the afterwards and it's actually the width was the height. So height, width, depth is standard and what I recommend. And then if it's part of a series. So that seems like a long inventory numbering ID, but the more the information that you can put in there, the more that it's going to be helpful for you. And that this inventory numbering ID is different than the unique ID. The unique ID does not have to be as long. And, you know, make sure that you write this or you attach this inventory numbering to your artwork. So it has to be on the physical pieces and the boxes, as well as in the digital data. And there's metadata that you can do in graphics online, and you can copy this information, put the metadata into each of your images. And here is where I want you to go to 69 through 99. So as I mentioned, they have a lot more information that I'm going into about inventorying and numbering. So 69 through 99 are the pages in the career documentation workbook. There's a lot of people that will have ideas about your legacy, your family, galleries, commercial interests, students, scholars, researchers. They're all going to bring their ideas on who you were and what you did and why you did it. And you are important in this because it's your story. As you maintain your own records and you toss out old work that you don't want to be part of the narrative, then it's going to be helpful in what they tell about you. But we want to understand who you are, what you did, why you did it, and possibly even how you did it. How also did you persevere as a woman in through the times when it was really hard to be seen and recognized? I mean, SOLA is based on supporting women who are continually under-recognized. So as you put this together, we can recognize you further, not only now and in the future, but also in the future. Now, those records can be organized in any way that makes sense to you, and you should think about what that is. How do you want your story to be told? And maybe you think about it in a chronological way, or maybe it's based on a narrative. Possibly it is based on historical events. So someone is, I can hear you. So if you want to mute yourself, I can't see who that is. That'd be great so that we can continue to hear. So thinking about how you want to tell your story, and you can also work your archive around that. And as I mentioned before, you don't have to do this alone. In fact, the Joan Foundation and SOLA, we recommend that you don't do it alone. It can be a group working together. There are the Bay Area artists. There's a group that I will follow up with the exact information. But they all got together and said, this is way too hard. Let's work together to do this. And, there's groups that can be founded. The Artist Legacy Foundation is an organization that was, that's a collective of people that are supporting the estate of one person, and then more people came on to help us all understand and support each other in this endeavor of archiving. But this worksheet, the Legacy Partners, is a little bit of what you might want to think of as you are looking for someone to support you. They should be willing and actually eager to do some research to support you, reasonably informed about the art world. They really have to be an active listener, because this is all about you telling your story. It's great if they're curious and they have interesting perspectives to provide to you, and they have to be willing to be mutually vulnerable. The studio and the space that you have been inhabiting, both in the art world as well as in public and in private, can be very sacred. It can be very scary. It can be horrendous to say, I haven't had a show in 20 years and I keep making this work. And just really quickly, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you have, because she's really well known all of a sudden, but Hilma F. Klint is an artist that is a fantastic example of someone who could not get her work out in the world. And it wasn't until, I think, nearly 80 years, 100, that she finally had an exhibition, and now she's everywhere. So she literally had, a handful of exhibitions and created this monumental work in a unique style. If she didn't document and leave journals and journals and journals of information, we would have had no information about her. You are art history. You are art history. You are creating right now. What you are doing is part of the cultural fabric of art right now. And I want you to think about the really organized people that might have their archive together, or the really well-known people that have their archive together. And I go back to Hilma F. Klint. She had an archive, but in her day, in her time, she really wasn't well known. If we only rely on those that either have it totally together or those that are really popular because of current trends, then we are missing a big part of history and our art history. So don't think that because you aren't showing, I'm not insinuating or inferring that that's not happening, but it can be hard to continually persist. But there's lots of people that are going to want to look back. First of all, the family or estate that is interested in your materials because they might be in charge of it next, they're going to be the keeper of your materials after you are gone, whatever that means. If it's a friend that is the estate of your archive, or the family that is close that you've chosen to be a part of your estate, they're going to want to know exactly what it is that you intended. The galleries and commercial interests, going back to Hilma F. Klint, because I've done a lot of research on her because I think she's fascinating. Recently, when the NFT thing was really going crazy, and there was a Hollywood person that decided they were going to do an NFT of Hilma F. Klint's work. Well, that was directly opposing what her wishes were. So again, there's, it's not just galleries and museums, but you never know in 100 years, who are the commercial rock stars that are going to say, oh, Carol's work, yes, I'm going to use that in my whatever. And maybe that's okay, but you get to choose. And there's the students, there's the archivist, there's future artists that want to understand how you did something. The scholars and researchers, they want to know the ways in which you promote your product and how did you get yourself out to your audience. And then there are the community and cultural institutions. I think we often forget about the community centers. We forget about the historical societies that are part of where we grew up, possibly where we went to school. We exclude the histories of who we are, and in that really wide encapsulated sense. But these are the people in the future that are going to want to know who you are and what you did and how you did it. How did you continue in this crazy career and why? And, you know, it's not just about luck. I don't know if anybody really thinks it's about luck, but we look around and we might see other people that we think are lucky. But if you are prepared and you have good habits, then it's going to support you in the art exhibitions, the career opportunities. And when you meet the right people at the right place at the right time, these are the components of what you're going to be able to share and go to immediately to help them understand what you have right now. I mean, it's not just 100 years down the road, but it's what's happening right now. And the more organized you are prepared to send them work to you understand your story. So it's really important to do this. And also in our planner that we have created are these worksheets to help you understand, what are the weekly goals. There's a lot more in this planner than I have shown you today. It's a good 80 something pages, but these are a couple of the worksheets that we think are really helpful as you are moving forward with this work. One of the final pages, 81 in our planner, is just that same thing that we started with. What is success? And success is an individual story. And there's nothing that says that you have to build in success to your historical documents and your artwork in order to be important to art history. You are simply art history, like I said. So don't deny us who you are and what you are, but clarify your archiving goals. Allow yourself to understand the archiving capital A systems a little bit better with these workbooks so that you can decide what works or bodies of works are most meaningful to you. And then start there. Don't do the stuff that you hate first. Start with this really exciting pieces. It can be chronological or not. Pick up a pile and just start. And that's all it's really going to take, one pile at a time. Thinking about those relationships, it's not just for the archive, but reach back to the community centers or to the school or whatever it might be, the historical society in your trajectory, in your history. Find out if there is something that they do with artists that are about, during, before, after their careers, after their lives. Those relationships can only be built, well, they can be built after you pass, but it's helpful if you start those relationships now. And then take care of yourself. This is not an endeavor that it does need to be done. I don't want to diminish the need for this, but I do want to say that there is a balance to be had, and take your time, find your balance, be at peace with where your lifestyle needs to be right now. That is one of the fascinating things about an artist's career. It's not like typically people don't retire from this career. So how can you manage all of this? And again, just start one pile at a time. People tend to tell me that they have found old friends when they start going through their artworks and through their archives and through the piles or the files or whatever your system is. So allow those old friends to help you move forward. And then as you're doing it, there's so many ways to document the stories that those old friends bring up for you. And sometimes a little digital recorder, you might want to do that. While you're looking through your archives, it's going to bring up emotions, it's going to bring up memories. Allow yourself to feel all of that and document it. You're going to start a new YouTube channel that you're going through your archives, and I want you to send me a link when you do it. And lastly, anytime we're talking about an art career, it's about persistence. I mean, I don't need to tell you that. I know most of you, and I know that you worked hard for this. So I don't want to lose a second of what you've done. I want to know how you've continued in all of this. And I want to know honestly how you've continued on all of this. And I'm not the only one. There is a lot of interest in artists and their careers. So make sure that in the balance and in the clarity of where you start with your archive, you're building those reconnections, just keep going. So I thank you. SOLA thanks you. Our website is here. We are definitely here for you and eager to hear how this moves forward with you. I have raised my hand on myself, so I'm not going to answer my own question. I don't know how that happened. Buttons. So we have about 5 minutes. I just gave you a lot of information, and I'd love to hear any feedback or questions while you have me. So feel free to, I'm watching. So if you want to raise your hand, you're welcome to do that, or whatever works. Was it a lot? Oh yeah, Carol, please.
Oh, I gather that these people that we want to put on the team should be younger than us. Like, should they all be younger than us, or I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I think, who do you trust? That's a big component. Who do you think is going to be beneficial? Who out of that list of all those different things? I did say they should probably have a healthy back. So that might mean that they're younger than you, younger than me for that matter. So it just depends. Who do you trust and who are you comfortable with? Who can you really dive in? Having a legacy partner is allowing people that need support in the journey. So, it doesn't mean that they are going to survive you and be the ones that take care of your art. That might be a completely different thing. But this journey and the legacy partner is really about who can you dive into this work with, and who do you feel like is listening and can maybe not only listen, but maybe provide a new perspective and keep you motivated. And again, maybe it's a group of individuals that get together once a week, once a month, and it's an accountability thing. That's a great question. Thank you. I hope that helps.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Cassandra. Thanks for being here. All right. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Is everybody going out to work on their archive tonight? No. Tomorrow? All right. I'm going to try and upload some files real quick that I told you I would upload. So bear with me real quick. We got 2 minutes. I'm using every second.
Can I put in a plug for Artwork Archive?
Yes, please tell us about it.
Artworkarchive.com. That's where I got started, and I just try and keep up there.
And that's a database?
It's a lovely database with artworks and locations and exhibits, and you can even do contacts and sales, but I don't go all that way. But they've got a place for that little number.
Yeah, the unique ID. Yeah. So I just uploaded some documents, and I'll give you a second to grab those from the chat. But again, all of those documents are copies from both the SOLA planner that is downloadable in its comprehensive, as well as the Joan Mitchell Foundation planner. So I hope this has been helpful. I thank you for all the work that you're doing as an artist, as a woman that's paving the path for all of us to, I mean, you are the cultural fabric. And I know it's in our individual studios, it can feel solitary, and you might not feel like anyone is listening, or it can feel competitive. It can be a struggle at times because it's an ongoing journey. And I hope that if anything, I've given you hope. I hope I've given you hope that there are so many people that are interested in your story, but you have to put it together for us and allow us to take a look at a deeper level. And I know for me, it's been really interesting to look at all the work that I've done and then watch those threads. Life is such a magical mystery journey, isn't it? I mean, and yours is equally magical and mysterious, and let's not make it be too mysterious. So, so put your archives together, and I am looking forward to another conversation with SOLA Community Calls. The June community call, we may not have one because we are going to be celebrating the new awardees for the SOLA Award, which I don't know who they are yet. Our partners over at Artist Trust are doing a fantastic job and going through all the details, and we'll know in June, and we're going to have a celebration. And in July, we are bringing on, I think I told the group, some of you may have been here, some not. In July, we are having a presentation between Marge Levy, who some of you know, and part of the leadership team at SOLA, and also her friend Farrell Muertes. And Farrell is an archivist turned end of life doula for artists. What does that mean? If you're intrigued, you'll have to come to the July community call. And if we think about, who are the people that after you're gone, who is the audience? Farrell knows. And we're going to show a case study of Coil Hoover, who's a ceramicist who is in the late stages of Alzheimer's now. But Farrell has worked with Coil to get her work out. And she's going to show us where it's gone, who's looking at it, what shows she's been able to get her. I think it's going to be an incredible journey of understanding it and from a different perspective. So join us in July. I don't have all the stuff up on Eventbrite yet, but since you signed up there, if you follow us, it'll send you the information. And I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for your time and all you're doing. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.